I would imagine that a number of you are aware of Andrew Wilson and the Whatever podcast that he runs out of Miami. I have never taken the time to really focus on anything that this guy does because, frankly, I don't think it's important. I think most of it is a waste of time. I think there was way too much emphasis put on trying to go after people that have a lot of issues going on in their life. That when you're trying to facilitate a narrative, you end up creating an environment that is very toxic. First of all, it's very anti-woman. If anybody here is familiar with the Whatever podcast, this guy, Andrew Wilson, I mean, I knew he was a douche canoe. I just didn't know to what extent until he started going after Candace Owens on the Joe Rogan podcast. And that's where a lot of this started. So here we go.
Evidence not to. So for instance, the guy was still very much of a pro-Israel guy, even up to death. It is true that he was fighting with donors about the cause and this.
But if he could have been a substantial roadblock to the Iraq war, or Iran war rather, if he was a substantial roadblock.
Starting from the beginning, but let's start it from the very beginning.
There's any possibility that someone else killed him? Do you think there's any possibility that he was assassinated by Israel?
I've never. Well, when we're talking about possibility, almost anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
But there's not good evidence to support it, and there's probably pretty good evidence not to. So,
okay, so right off the bat, he is playing into the narrative of it's Tyler Robinson. There's not good evidence. Again, we have plenty of evidence that shows that whatever went down on September 10th, 2025, we have only been given a small portion of the story. And a lot of what we saw was amateur video that captured what happened. You mean to tell me that George Zinn acting up the way that he didn't play a role in what actually went down that day? You mean to tell me that the paving over of the crime scene that weekend wasn't some type of a cover-up? You mean to tell me that all of those meetings that took place, particularly the big one in the Hamptons, wasn't a forewarning, or should I say a foreshadowing of what was going to happen if Charlie got out of line? I think we can easily see now exactly why this is such a serious issue. And yet, this guy who speaks with a cadence that is actually like nails on a chalkboard level of disingenuine inflection. He sounds like a used car salesman, among other things. And to even suggest that there's absolutely no evidence that Israel is involved, the right answer is, I'm not sure if Israel's involved, but I can't rule it out. That's actually the politically correct answer to give. Now, I 1000% believe Israel was involved. Don't get me wrong. But I'm playing devil's advocate here. The only reason why he would say this, the only reason, is because he's being paid to say it. Period.
So, for instance, the guy was still very much of a pro-Israel guy, even up to death. It is true that he was fighting with donors about the cause and this.
But if he could have been a substantial roadblock to the Iraq war, or Iran war rather, if he was a substantial roadblock, I mean, that's not outside the realm of possibility that a nation state would take a guy like that out.
They didn't take out Fuentes. They didn't take out Owens. They didn't take out Ian Carroll. They didn't take out.
See, once again, I hate having to teach a moron new tricks, but I'm not teaching him anything. I'm just informing the audience here. Charlie Kirk, as much as anybody, is responsible for Donald Trump winning the presidential election in 24. The way that his organization, under his guidance, was able to move young voters, the GOTV efforts that TPUSA was able to do on behalf of Trump, especially in swing states, not just Arizona, not just Nevada. They made probably their biggest impact in those two states, and Trump flipped those two states from 20 to 24. I mean, in some ways, that was as big of an impact on the election alone. But we're only talking in an area where they're very strong in terms of boots on the ground. And you think about the other things that they were able to do throughout the entire country. Charlie Kirk is comparable to anybody else? No, he's not. He was in a league all by himself. Nobody's close. And for a while, things were good. And as Candace Owens has pointed out time and again, which cannot be denied, there is no question that his impact is as seismic as anything we have seen post Obama's run in 2008. Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA was a response, a direct response to what Obama accomplished in 2008. They had to find the conservative movement in the United States. They knew that if they didn't figure out a way to mobilize youth, they would potentially be in a position, especially if Obama got some of the policies that he should have gotten done, that the Democrats could have been in a position to dominate like they did in the FDR days for about 2 decades. That's very possible. But of course, it didn't happen. And the rise of Turning Point USA, which was much more of a libertarian organization. Again, I've been following this from basically the beginning. I saw how it changed over time. But there's no question that Charlie Kirk was an exceptionally talented politico who was able to mobilize millions of people and had as much of an impact on the 2024 election as anyone could have ever had. So to even for Andrew to suggest, to play dumb, like Charlie Kirk isn't that big of a deal, again, he's lying. And what's even more insane is that apparently he is either working for Turning Point USA or is being compensated by Turning Point USA. They make it so damn obvious that this is one massive cover-up. But to what end is the question? Maybe that's what it is. I think that's what it is. And I have more evidence to suggest that that is what it is and evidence that doesn't. We'll continue.
About any of these other huge personalities who were roadblocks to the way?
I think Charlie was very different. Carol, or excuse me, Fuentes is more easy to dismiss because he said so many wild things, shit posting. He said so many crazy things that I think he is almost embodying in their eyes like the crazy anti-Semite. Whereas Charlie was not an anti-Semite, was much more reasonable, and if he was going against Israel, it could be a real problem.
It is all about money and power. And when you lose somebody at the level of a Charlie Kirk, it's all over. Now, I think they were heading in a direction where they were going to lose it. But once Charlie Kirk stood in the way of the Iran war, that was the end. They said, we'll pick up the pieces afterwards and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. They were willing to put up with a lot. But one of the conditions that Miriam Adelson placed on Donald Trump with that $100 million to ensure that he won re-election, we're going to war in Iran. Now, they may not have said it in those exact terms, and Lord knows he probably didn't want to go in that direction. But Trump understood the score as soon as he got in there. But then again, so did Charlie. And Charlie was willing to stand on the train tracks to stop it. And initially, he did. You think if Charlie was still alive, that he wouldn't be mobilizing millions of people against that war right now? I bet you he would be.
I also think that he had a tremendous amount of influence on the president. He had his ear. You know, I think the president respected him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The interesting part, though, if you look at the history there, Fuentes conducted his Graper War against TPUSA and Charlie Kirk because of the pro-Israel stance and because of his pro-homosexual stance, his like big tent Republicanism, he called it. Yeah. So they had the pro stances for these things. And what's interesting about all of it, if you follow the details of it up until Kirk's death, TPUSA actually moved a lot more towards the Groyper-Fuentes position than they moved towards the kind of pro-Israel, this type of position, meaning a lot of the ideology that I think Kirk was changing on came from these various outside influences. And so if that's the case, why wouldn't you just curtail those outside influences and then you can keep Kirk as the mouthpiece, right?
Can I just say, I understand that people smoke cigarettes. It's a nasty habit. But this particular guy comes off as such a trash bag, smoking that cigarette in front of Rogan. If you were smoking a cigar, heck, if you were smoking a joint, I would have a lot more respect, and I could understand that. There was something really trashy about this guy holding that cig. It just, again, I'm not trying to judge somebody on appearances, but he may make a lot of money. Oh, I don't know if you're calling me a twat or if you're just saying that he's a chain smoker twat. Whichever one it is, thank you for letting me know. Chain smoking is a really bad thing, and it really isn't good for your health.
So I think that there's a pretty good counter to that idea. Now, you can't rule anything out as possibility, but it seems likely to me with how much trans have been shooting everything up for the last couple of years and how often it's the case that you find leftists involved in these signal groups and involved in these group chats and things like this for the purpose of radicalization. Wouldn't surprise me a bit if there was a left-wing conspiracy assisting Tyler Robinson.
This guy wants you to believe that there is an epidemic of trans shooters in this country. There was that one particular case that was pretty effed up, the one that happened in Texas at the school where the police wouldn't go in and help those innocent children. Isn't that what you're paid to do? That's just my thought. You know, I could be wrong. Be it as it may. Keep pushing, brother. Keep pushing. And that's a big one. That's even bigger. Believe it or not. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I've actually never smoked. I know that it's hard to never try that stuff, but you know. He has to be getting paid. He has to. There's no other logical explanation for this commentary other than, yeah. And I'm willing to take it at face value that there have been a handful of trans shooters. I'm not saying there isn't. But shooting it's a problem. But not the way that he's describing it. And again, this wasn't a random shooting. This was an assassination. And it wasn't an assassination that was done by some rando who may have been MK Ultra. I don't think anybody is really buying into that. And so as it turns out, Andrew and his partner, Atlas, Tom Atlas, whatever his name is, they're trying to goad her into doing a debate on this topic, on Charlie Kirk. And so Candace responded to their inquiries.
We'll give you $300,000.
What is her position? What does she think happened?
She thinks that Israel worked in conjunction with TPUSA and Erika Kirk to murder Charlie.
You know, they often say that the most logical explanation or the most reasonable explanation is the one that all the directions point to. Now, again, I'm not here to say that this assassination is a direct result of something that Andrew Colvett, Mikey Brown, or Mikey McCoy, excuse me, Erika Kirk, Blake Neff. I'm not saying that they're the ones that pulled the trigger. I'm not even saying that they're the ones that were involved in the entire setup of this assassination. But do I think it's very plausible, even reasonable, that they went along for the ride, knowing full well the fallout and the benefit financially, at least in the short term, that they were going to get from it? Yes, I do. We have covered Erika Kirk many times before. There is no question that there is some really shady shit going on with her background, and not just with her, but with her parents. Questions that still remain unanswered. Questions that I think a lot of people want to have answers to. Because as I said, from the moment I started covering this, all roads lead to Israel and their cause.
Based on what?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Nobody actually knows. She's never presented a single shred of evidence thus far that Israel ever worked to murder Kirk, that Erika Kirk certainly didn't. In fact, her position for the longest time was, if Erika Kirk comes out and tells me to stop this, to stop the conspiracy on this, I will. So Erika did. She went out publicly and she was like, enough, enough. You're just causing more problems than good here as this investigation's going on. And then suddenly Erika's now part of the conspiracy. By the next day, she's trying to cover it up. She's part of the conspiracy too. When I went to the TPUSA HQ, and I talked to Erika briefly while I was there, the first thing I did was what I think every normal, moral human being would ever do. I gave her a hug. And I told her how god-awful sorry I was that happened to her.
Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know we've got a pretty good sized crowd right now. We're over 625, been floating around 650. Got a really great crowd here tonight. Guys, if you haven't smashed that like button yet, please make sure you do. I want to address this. Sorry, gentlemen, but this is for the ladies in particular. For the ladies that are here tonight, does Andrew Wilson give off like a creeper vibe? Because I'm kind of getting that feeling. I'm getting the feeling he's kind of a weird dude. Like there's something there. I want to hear from the audience. What do you guys think?
Like, could you even imagine how that's got to feel for her? Especially now that she has tens of thousands of people accusing her of murdering and conspiring to murder and then cover up what happened to her own. I mean, that's like mind-boggling psychological torture on a level that I've never seen.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just throw all of that bullshit away. And it seems to me that much of the audience agrees that he is definitely a creeper, not a surprise. There are many different levels, as I just pointed out, in terms of the way that you can be involved in an assassination, in a conspiracy to assassinate at this level. I am not convinced that Erika was not brought into Charlie's life deliberately when it happened. And for the purposes of whatever it is. You know, I think Charlie, like I said, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think Charlie woke up one day and kind of realized he wasn't in control anymore. He probably always suspected that he wasn't. He always suspected that there was something there about the way that the organization was being run, that he thought he was the guy. But then he wasn't. And it started eating at him, and he didn't really know who to trust or who to talk to. It turns out that Candace was somebody that he could. She never said anything until it was over. No one knew anything about this. And this had been going on for months. Candace never said anything. Why would she? There is such thing as trust. There is also plausible deniability. You can't talk about these things for many legal purposes. You know, TPUSA is a private company. It wasn't publicly traded or anything like that. But there's a lot of legal ramifications for things that you can say to the detriment of, let's say, shareholders within the company that promote it, fund it, etc. When he realized that this didn't make any sense to him anymore, he wanted to either rid himself of it or figure out how to rectify the situation and bring it home once more, make it as it once was, but he couldn't. And so he basically said, I'm going to let the chips fall where they're going to fall. That's what he said. And if I get killed, I get killed. But just understand why this is happening. That's why Candace has been relentless about this, and as she should be.
Hindsight is 20/20, but given the reaction, I think it probably would have been better for her to like lay low for a little while.
1000%.
The going out with the sparklers was not a great idea. Like all that was not a great idea because it just seemed insane.
Thank you, Joe Rogan, for saying that. People were going, yeah, okay.
Charlie, I just think, honestly, you're too stupid to understand them.
So, Andrew, can I sell you on my worldview?
Yes.
Your wife has 3 baby daddies and has been married twice before.
And you...
Under
you lick
under your religion.
You lick...
Now, this is a guy who tries to moralize on these women that he brings on the show. I saw somebody mention earlier the guys that would do the Fresh and Fit podcast. And essentially what they would do is they would bring on these women, primarily women that were on OnlyFans, and try to moralize on them, saying that they're sinners and that they're bad and that they, shouldn't be doing this, or they're basically trying to show how ditzy and even outright dumb that they are, or that they have a massive ego about their looks. That's real slop. That is useless, pointless, degrading content that Andrew Wilson does in spades. And so he brings this lady on who calls herself Charlie, and she addresses the fact that his wife, is it Andrea? I forget her name. Point is, his wife has been going after Candace, trying to egg her on about having this debate and moralizing on her own grounds. Again, I'm not here to judge somebody. She's got 3 baby daddies. She's been married twice and now a 3rd time to Andrew, and he gets upset about that. Basically, all she's doing is just telling you to look yourself in the mirror and say, why is it that you think you have the higher moral ground when you are involved in your own questionable lifestyle? Again, they always say the call is coming from inside the house. You always have to wonder what the motivation is for people like this to do this. Money, power, everything is always connected back to that. That's why we say, being that it's a class war, everything is always interconnected, and it always will be. There isn't, as I said, there's very rare circumstances where there's a silver bullet, where there's a different reason for why they're doing this, or why somebody like Andrew Wilson is all of a sudden the spokesperson for TPUSA and is trying to goad Candace Owens into a debate. There's no rhyme or reason for it. It's actually kind of stupid. But, hey, if it's working for him, I guess, if this is what he's getting paid to say, so be it. The question is Candace going to give in?
What is that?
You're a Don't talk about my wife, you stupid. Shut your mouth. Shut your stupid mouth.
But that's him in a nutshell. Just kind of curses and smokes cigarettes and tries to denigrate people. I got to tell you, from the outside, it kind of looks like Turning Point USA scraping the bottom of the barrel looking for influencers. And they've now arrived at people who are just amoral, who will lie about what people have said and intentionally misrepresent their positions, and who I would say are not reminiscent of the honest debate strategy and style that was once employed by their company founder. I mean, Charlie Kirk's brand was clean and respectable.
I got a grip.
Not that I think that that's anything of real relevance, but when Candace talks about what was the organization, I don't think, being what it is, there are differences. There's no question that there are substantive differences between what I personally think were of some value that Turning Point USA once had, which was when it came to certain issues of libertarianism, being it constitutional rights, the anti-war movement. Part of the reason why Charlie had always talked about who his favorite politician was on Capitol Hill was Thomas Massey. So I think underneath it all, Charlie was a Christian and he was a libertarian conservative. And even though we definitely have our differences, there is no question in my mind that there was common ground there. There was areas where we could get along and figure out how to coalesce on certain key issues. But the second you opened up that doorway for Zionism to walk through the door, that was the end. And as I said, I've been to a handful of TPUSA events. I was at a big one in Tampa, Florida, a handful of years ago. Those events are not cheap. Costs a lot of money. It's a recruiting ground for sure. It's a social hour for sure. But there's no question. It costs a lot of money. You think anybody's showing up there? No, definitely not. And that's where the corporate denigration of our system finds its way in. Again, I'm not here to defend Charlie, but I am here to get to the bottom of his assassination. That's the goal. Now, I did say that we were going to point out a couple of points here, and this is also something I want people to remember. Andrew Wilson is desperate. I don't know why or what he thinks he's going to get out of it, but Andrew Wilson is desperate to do a debate with Candace Owens. He wants to do it for 300,000, and now it's 500,000. I think they want to do it at their studio. I mean, I've always said, if I'm Candace, I am always very suspicious of when people want you to come to their territory. Always very suspicious. And I want people to remember that there is still people who want Candace Owens' head. They do. But I also want you to see, kind of in a nutshell, exactly what this whatever podcast is, and more importantly, just how much of a douchey egomaniac Andrew Wilson actually is.
Require a mind?
Sure, Andrew.
Well, then it can't be objective.
Yes, it can, because objective things can be immaterial. You don't know what objective means.
There is a sub-definition too, not dependent on the mind for existence. Actual. I'll repeat hers though.
Will you stop
of a
deep-ing the mic? Andrew, stop doing this to your face.
You're coping so bad. You're so dumb. Yeah, you know, I can't believe you did this so bad. I just want to know if rights are objective and they don't depend on minds. Can you please tell me where I could find them? Just
it's
rights.
Immaterial. Do you understand that? It's a concept. Do you know what a concept is?
Do concepts require minds?
Sure, Andrew.
So then they're not objective.
But something can exist in your mind and still be objective.
Are we talking about something, or are we talking about rights?
So do you not think that people have an objective right to life?
Listen.
You're
Go ahead,
arguing
and then
on
Andrew,
a
you
definition because you don't want to actually have to defend your opinion.
Why would I ever in a million years be required to defend rights if you can't even fucking tell me what they are?
This is a great example, a prime example of the type of nonsense that this channel puts out there on a regular basis. And evidently, a lot of people like to watch this guy's channel. I don't think they necessarily like to watch him per se, but a lot of people get caught up. This is in many ways, for those of you who are from the 80s and the 90s, this is the Jerry Springer effect. This is the Geraldo Rivera effect. This is the train wreck that people watch. That type of entertainment, much as I had the same opinion when the Kardashians came out, when Paris Hilton was a thing, rage watching is definitely part of it. And I do think a lot of times the escapism aspect is part of it. And I only showed you this one because I only looked at a few and I said, there was really no point to this. They were raging over the definition of language regarding what is an objective concept if it happens to be a thought and not an actual law. Is that what they were talking? Like I said, if the intent is to be a joke, you had it. And yes, Howard Stern is another good example of that. Heck, even Don Imus would be a good example of that. And that's where we're at. This is Golden, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's Ricky Lake, not Nikki Lake. But yes, point still stands, and I agree with you. It's called trash TV, slop TV, whatever you want to call it. And it's transitioned from what was once on afternoon television or mid-morning television. You know, if you were ever homesick from school and wondered what people were doing during the day if they weren't out working, they were watching this shit. And now, because the internet is universal, love to you, Rosemary, as well. Hope you guys kick that troll-looking bastard out of your country finally. And the point is, because the internet and technology is now universal, you can take it with you wherever you want. So you can watch that stuff whenever you want. And for whatever reason, this is what gets pumped up by the algorithm, and this is what people are drawn to. Do I think that there is any true value at all to Candace Owens sitting down for a conversation with Andrew Wilson? Not at all. Complete waste of time, complete waste of effort, complete waste of money. Do not give this guy that satisfaction. Don't. First of all, he's going to go on there and he'll probably make a fool of himself. But in the end, that's not really his intention. The intention is to be prepared with a handful of talking points to try to dig at Candace, get her upset, and get some viral moments for the benefit of TPUSA. That's about it. But if you were asking me, I think in proper context, the word is appropriate, but yes, it becomes it becomes more of a fashionable word to just use in almost any circumstance. Tina, I don't know what you're saying is the best show ever. I shun at the thought, but you let me know which one you're referring to. But if I were, I definitely agree, Palser. However, the fact that he is so Golden's right. The fact that he is so driven to draw attention, the fact that he is offering money, and we know it's not his money. He's not throwing that money around. Some rich Zionist is doing that for him, saying, I want you to debate Candace Owens. I want you to get her on. I want you to give her a piece of our mind. I want you to tell her exactly what we're thinking. That is exactly what their intentions are. That's their plan. So if I'm Candace, I understand. If you choose to go down this road, that's entirely your call. But if it were me and I were making that judgment call, I wouldn't give him the time of day, not even 5 minutes.